The test before the treasure. Maybe you've been praying for a financial breakthrough, asking God to provide, to rescue you from the pressure, to lift the weight that's been crushing your confidence, and yet nothing. No breakthrough, no doors, no clarity, only silence. And you're starting to wonder, is God ignoring me? Or is he preparing me? You see, there's something most people never realize. Before God brings wealth, he brings a warning. Before he gives an increase, he gives instructions. Before the promotion comes the process. And if you miss that process, you won't be able to carry what you prayed for. Worse, you may mistake the blessing as a right instead of a responsibility. So the question isn't, will God bless me? The question is, when he does, will I be ready? Because wealth doesn't begin in your wallet. It begins in your character. Let's begin here. Because this is where most people get it wrong. They wait to have more before they give. But in the kingdom, giving is not the result of wealth. It's the requirement for it. You think God is waiting for you to have more before you start giving, but what if it's the other way around? What if he's waiting for you to open your hand in faith before he opens heaven? In favor, give, and it shall be given unto you. A good measure pressed down, shaken together, and running over. This isn't just a poetic verse. It's a spiritual principle, one that rewrites the logic of the world, because the world says, get first, then give. But heaven says, give first, then trust me to multiply. Generosity is not a luxury. It's not something reserved for the rich, the established, the successful. Generosity is a seed, and seeds are not planted after the harvest. They're planted before, when the soil is still dry, when the sun still burns, when there's no guarantee of rain. Generosity is the evidence of faith under pressure. It's what you do when you don't have enough, but believe that God does. Napoleon Hill once wrote, you must give before you can get. It's the law of increasing returns, and that law still holds. Giving isn't just an act of kindness. It's a declaration of belief. It says, I trust the source, not my supply. I believe in overflow even in this desert. I won't wait until I feel secure. I'll show even while I feel small. And God sees that. You may think your gift is too small to matter, that it's unnoticed, insignificant, irrelevant. But he sees the $20 you gave when you only had $40 left. He sees the groceries you quietly dropped off for a neighbor who didn't ask, even though your own fridge was half empty. He sees the single mom who gave from her child support check, not because she had extra, but because she had faith. He sees, and he remembers, not the amount, but the attitude. Because in God's economy, it's never about the size of the gift. It's about the size of the surrender. You're asking God to open new doors, but your hands are clenched, gripping what little you have with the fear of losing more. But here's the truth. God won't bless what you won't release, and he won't multiply what you refuse to sow. He doesn't pour abundance into closed fists. He opened his hand, because the hands that are willing to let go are the hands he uses to distribute, not just to you, but through you. That's the pattern. Give. Watch heaven move. Be used to bless others, and become part of a cycle that never runs dry. This is the secret of every man God has used with influence. Abraham gave the best land to Lot, and God blessed him more. The widow at Zarephath gave Elijah her last flour and never lacked again. The boy gave 5 loaves and watched Jesus feed 5,000. God always honors the giver, not because he needs your gift, but because your gift reveals your trust. So if you're praying for abundance, start where you are, with what you have, even if it feels small, even if it hurts a little, because the first test of wealth is not how you spend what you have. It's whether you're willing to release it. So here's the question you must ask. Am I proving that I trust God to provide? Or am I waiting for God to trust me while I still live in fear? Because if you want to be trusted with more, you must prove faithful with little. And if you want to walk in overflow, you must first learn to sow from your scarcity. That's where it begins. Not in wealth, but in willingness. Not in having plenty, but in honoring the principle, give first. Then, watch what God does next. Now hear this. You don't need more. You need to manage what you already have, because God won't multiply what you mismanage, and he won't finance chaos dressed up as need. Here's a truth most people won't tell you. God will never multiply what you consistently mismanage. We keep asking for more income, more open doors, more opportunities. But God, in His wisdom, is asking something much simpler. What are you doing with what I've already placed in your hands? Because in the kingdom, increase doesn't begin with blessing. It begins with behavior. Whoever can be trusted with little can also be trusted with much. Luke 16:10. You may be praying for a new job, a financial miracle, debt relief, a promotion. But here's the hard question. Are you managing what you already have or misusing it? Because God is not in the habit of funding dysfunction. He doesn't pour abundance into broken bucket. He doesn't finance chaos. He rewards order. He blesses wisdom, and He promotes discipline. If you're always broke, if the paycheck disappears before the month is halfway through, if your credit card is maxed out, if you're borrowing from tomorrow to survive today, it's not always the devil. It's not always a spiritual attack. Sometimes it's just poor stewardship. We want to believe it's warfare, but sometimes it's weakness in decision making. You don't need more money. You need more management, because without structure, even overflow will turn into scarcity. Let's be honest. We upgrade phones we don't need, not because they're broken, but because we're bored. We drive cars that look good, but drain our peace every month. We buy clothes not for function, but for validation from people who aren't even watching. And then we wonder, why hasn't God blessed me with more? But God doesn't bless wastefulness. He doesn't reward recklessness. Napoleon Hill said it plainly, if you can't budget what you have, you'll never retain what you receive. In other words, don't pray for more until you can honor what you already hold. Maybe God isn't saying no to your request. Maybe He's saying, not until you're ready. Because wealth without wisdom is gasoline poured into a leaking tank. It won't take you far. It'll only make the next crash more explosive. God isn't trying to harm you with delay. He's trying to prepare you through discipline. So what does stewardship look like? Tithing when it's tight, not waiting until someday. Giving back to God first, even when it stretches you. Budgeting when it's boring. Not chasing excitement in spending, but setting limits with intention. Delaying pleasure for future peace. Not choosing what feels good now, but what serves your future self best. Saying no to impulse so you can say yes to purpose. Every dollar you spend is a decision, and every decision is either direction or distraction. This kind of stewardship is quiet. No one claps for it. No one posts about it. No one sees it. But heaven tracks it, because when God sees a man who honors his paycheck, who lives below his means, who budgets like it's a ministry, who values integrity over image, He doesn't hesitate to trust Him with more. You've shown that money serves you, not the other way around. You're not driven by desire. You're guided by discipline. You don't chase wealth to look successful. You build margin to stay faithful. So before you ask God for increase, look at your hand. Are you stewarding the little as if it were already abundance? Because when you prove that you can handle little with honor, clarity, discipline, and gratitude, then God knows you're ready for more. And the promotion won't just be financial, it'll be spiritual. You'll grow in peace, in trust, and in impact. Not because you got more, but because you learned to master what already was yours. And this one, it's the hardest test of all. When nothing's changing, when the silence feels endless, when your obedience seems invisible, that's when God is watching closest, because faithfulness without reward is what separates the ready from the reckless. This is the part they don't preach often, the part that feels the most painful and the least productive. You've been doing all the right things. You've given, you've managed, you've sacrificed, you've prayed, you've shown up, and still nothing. No shift, no breakthrough, no confirmation, just silence. And that silence is louder than any voice. It starts to whisper, maybe you're doing something wrong. Maybe this isn't working. Maybe God forgot you. But hear me. He hasn't. God hasn't forgotten your name. He hasn't misplaced your promise. He hasn't ignored your obedience. He's just teaching you something that can't be learned in comfort, faithfulness without applause. Because in the kingdom, what's planted in secret is what gets rewarded in public. Staying faithful when it's easy, that's expected. But staying faithful when it's dark, when you don't see the fruit, when every door seems locked, that's when faith becomes real. Be not weary in well-doing, for in due season you shall reap if you faint not. Galatians 6:9. And that due season, it doesn't come by calendar. It comes by character. God is watching, not just to see what you'll do once you get the blessing, but what you'll do before it arrives. Because consistency reveals what comfort never could. Anyone can give once. Anyone can commit for a week. Anyone can post about obedience. But can you? Budget when no one's clapping? Pray when you feel unheard? Stay generous when you're still waiting? Show up not because it's working, but because he's still worthy? This season is not punishment. It's preparation. And the silence you feel isn't a void. It's a vault. God is storing something sacred in you. Strength that can't be shaken. Discipline that doesn't depend on dopamine. Conviction that doesn't crack under delay. Napoleon Hill said, "Riches come to those who are prepared to receive them and keep them." But preparation doesn't always feel spiritual. Sometimes it just looks like getting up early when you're exhausted, choosing wisdom when no one's watching, paying that last debt when you'd rather reward yourself, praying again when you're not sure it's working. That's the hard road, but that's also the holy road, because the man who endures without applause is the man who can handle increase without arrogance. And here's the twist. God isn't slow, he's strategic. When your character finally matches your calling, he moves fast. Suddenly, doors you never knocked on swing open. Conversations happen that you didn't initiate. Opportunities find you, not because you forced them, but because you were faithful when no one saw you. That's the kind of man God promotes. Not the one who chases blessing, but the one who walks with purpose, who obeys in the shadows, who stays anchored through the storm. Because when wealth arrives, it doesn't come empty-handed. It brings weight, responsibility, pressure. And if you don't have spiritual endurance, the blessing will break you. But if you've been through the fire, if you've chosen faithfulness when it felt pointless, if you've obeyed without outcome, then you won't be broken by blessing. You'll build with it. So stay the course. Don't just act faithful. Be faithful. Don't quit because it's slow. Don't stop because no one sees. Because heaven sees. Heaven remembers. Heaven rewards. And when it's time, you won't just receive what you asked for. You'll become the kind of man who can carry what others collapse under. Maybe you've wondered, why hasn't it happened yet? Why the doors are still closed? Why the struggle still lingers? Why the numbers still don't add up, even when you've done all the right things? But let me tell you something. God is not delaying your blessing. He's developing your being. Because wealth, real wealth, isn't just about money. It's about what money reveals. And if you're not prepared, it will reveal the cracks. So before he gives you abundance, he gives you alignment. Before he hands you the platform, it fortifies your foundation. Before he sends the increase, he inspects your integrity. This isn't punishment. It's protection. It's process. And it proves this. God cares more about who you're becoming than what you're receiving. So what now? Give even when it's uncomfortable. Manage even when it's mundane. Stay faithful even when it feels forgotten. Because all of heaven is watching. And when your obedience catches up with your assignment, God moves fast. He releases. He multiplies. He makes up for the years of waiting with favor that no man can stop. But he won't do it until your character says, I'm not chasing money. I'm carrying mission. Because in the kingdom, wealth is not a prize. It's a platform. And only the faithful can stand on it. So stay low. Stay grounded. Stay ready. Because the moment is coming. And when it does, you won't just be blessed, you'll be entrusted. And that, my friend, is the real definition of divine wealth.